This starts to make more sense when we do practice. We all know that. So let's do a couple of practice problems. So the first practice problem we have here in 1A, it deals with two intersecting chords. We can use intersecting chords or intersecting secants. They would look the same. So the angle that's formed here, angle LGK, is the one we're trying to find. Remember, the measure of angle LGK is equal to half the sum of the arcs. So my two arcs are going to be on the inside between the two angles. It would be LK. So we want the measure of LK plus the measure of HJ. That's our formula straight from the theorem. So plugging in what we know the measure of angle LGK is equal to 1/2. What is the measure of LK? Arc LK is 1/16 plus arc HJ, which is 47. Order of operations states, let's go ahead and add these together first. 116 plus 47 is 163. Half of 163 is 81.5. Degrees, we're looking at angle measurements, it's in degrees. It's okay to have decimal angle measurements. Excuse me. Okay, let's go ahead and do the next one. 1B, same type of problem. We have two intersecting secants this time, okay? Here's my intersecting secants and I want to find what this x degree is. I want to solve for x. But notice that the intercepted arcs don't have any measurements. So I know that the sum of those two would, and take half of it, would equal that x degrees, but I don't have that. What I do have though are these arcs. Notice if I took half the sum of these two arcs, that would give me this angle here. If I can solve for this angle, aren't these two angles just a linear pair? And don't all linear pairs add up to 180 degrees? So yeah, we'll have to do an extra step, but we can do that. So let's find the measurement of this angle here. We'll call that angle NXQ. And that angle is equal to half the sum of the arcs it intercepts. So 55 plus 75. Order of operations, do what's in the parenthesis first. 55 plus 75 is 130. Take half of 130 and you get 65 degrees. So that's this angle here. This angle here is 65 degrees. So now I can find x because I know x degrees plus that 65 degrees. It's a linear pair. They're supplementary. They add up to 180 degrees. Therefore, we can subtract 65 from both sides. And we know that x degrees is going to equal 115 degrees. Hopefully that made sense to you. Okay, 1C. Going right through these. Here's my 1C. 128. Intersects these two chords. I need to find x. 128 is the angle measurement formed by the sum of those two arcs. So let's plug that in. I know the angle 128 is equal to half the sum of the arcs. So 154 plus x degrees. Get over a little bit. Okay, order of operations. I can't add these two together. They're not like terms. So let's go ahead and do the next step. We gotta combine each side. We gotta simplify each side the best we can. So let's go ahead and distribute that. So to distribute that, we have 128 equals half of 154, So half of 154 divided by 2 is just 77 degrees, plus 1/2 x. So now we can go ahead and subtract 77 from both sides. When we do that, we get 51 over here equals 1/2 x. How do I get rid of that 1/2 x? How do I get x by itself? Of course, you multiply both sides by 2. You guys knew that. When I multiply both sides by 2, these cancel out and leave me with x by itself. And 2 times 51 is just 102 degrees. And we're done. Okay, one last set of problems we're going to look at. One's with some exterior angles. Some arcs. Okay, on to A. We're going to find the measure of arc LJK. Or I'm sorry, the measure of arc JLK. So JLK is this whole arc right here. Well, notice that arc is formed from a secant and a tangent. Therefore, this angle that's 116 degrees is equal to half the intercepted arc. So we can just set that up. 116 degrees is equal to half the intercepted arc. The intercepted arc is the measure of JLK. That's just an example of the second one right here from the previous notes. Okay, that's this one right here. So now to solve for the arc JLK, we just have to multiply both sides by 2. That will get rid of my fractions. Cancel that. And I have the measure of arc JLK. Don't forget the little swoop there, equals to 116 times 2, which is 232 degrees. Okay, number 2B. I want to find the measure of RQS. RQS is this angle right there. Again, it is equal to half the intercepted arc. That intercepted arc, whoops, I don't know what that intercepted arc. It tells me that in the arc QTS, there's QTS. That one's 238. So what is the measure of QS? Well, remember, these two are touching. So all the way around the circle there, that's 360 degrees. So we can find arc QS by just doing 360 minus 238. So that arc there is going to equal 122 degrees. So I'll label that. Now I can find my angle. The measure of angle RQS is equal to half the measure of the arc it cuts, 122. So half of 122 is just 61 degrees. Dun dun dun. Okay, last two more. Let's look at some exterior angles now. I want to find the measure of angle S. That's that angle right down there. Okay. Angle S is formed by a tangent and a secant. There's my tangent and my secant. The arcs that are cut by those angles is that angle there and that arc there. So remember, the exterior angle, now that it's on the outside, I got to do a difference. Inside angles, I take the sum. Outside angles, we take the difference. So we're going to say angle S, the measure of angle S, is equal to the difference of the two arcs. So 1/2, and always make sure you do the big arc minus the small arc. Order of operations, 179 minus 71 is going to give you 108. And half of 108 is equal to 54. So the measure of angle S is equal to 54 degrees. Hopefully by now you're getting the hang of this. We're going to do one last problem and then we're going to let you guys work on your enrichment for the day. So in this problem, it's giving me the angle. So angle Y is 68 degrees. So that 68 goes with that angle there, okay? So again, that angle, 68 degrees, angle Y, is equal to the difference of the arcs divided by 2, or 1/2 the difference of the arcs. So we're going to go ahead and fill that in. Angle Y, right? Angle Y is 68 degrees. It is equal to 1/2 the difference of the arcs. So that's the big arc, which is 224, minus the small arc. I don't know what that is, so why don't we call that X. X is going to be my arc XZ. Okay? Now I can't simplify that. I can't combine anything in there. Okay, so my next step, I need to distribute this through. So using order of operations, let's go ahead and distribute that through. So 68 equals, so half of 224, 1/2 times 224 is going to give me 112 minus half X. Now we can go ahead and add, actually subtract 112 from both sides. It's going to give me a negative number. That's kind of strange looking, huh? All right, let's see what it works out. So it's positive 68 and a negative 112 is going to give me a negative 44. Move that up a little bit. Negative 44. These are now gone, and that equals a negative 1/2 X. Now I gotta get rid of that negative 1/2. Well, I know if I multiply by 2, the 2's will cancel out. Well, remember, a negative times a negative is gonna give me a positive, so if I multiply both sides by a negative 2, that would make that a positive X. So if I multiply this side by negative 2, I have to multiply this side by negative 2. These negative 2's, negative times a negative makes a positive. The 2's cancel each other out. So you have X equals, negative times a negative is positive, 88 degrees. So the measure of arc XZ equals 88 degrees. Well, that's it on notes. Hopefully you're able to follow okay. We're going to give you some practice problems right now to work on and turn in by the end of the class. It's going to start, this is enrichment. Enrichment number 35. Okay, we're going to do page, let's zoom that in a little bit. We are working on chapter 10.6, so this is page 745. You're going to start off with numbers 1 through 6 all, and then I hand-picked a couple for you. So we're going to do 8, 12, 16, 18, 20, 22, and 26. So we got 13 problems for you to do in class. Hopefully you have plenty of time to go through that and do those problems. If you have any issues at all or any troubles, I will be here at tutorial tomorrow, so please come in and visit me and be good, okay? If you don't have your books, you may go to your locker. Only 2 people at a time go to get your book from your locker. If you need to borrow a laptop, that is fine, but you better be using it to log into the textbook. I don't want to see anybody playing video games. If you don't have this in and I find out it's because you've been on video games, you're going to be in big trouble. Okay? No video games. We're working on our enrichment. Let's get it done. Have a great weekend, guys, and we'll see you on Monday.